To try and make these videos better, I've subjected them to a fair amount of scrutiny, and so when I get something wrong, I try to correct it in the next video. We have modified the dowel so that the tube slides up and down very easily on it. The bottom of the dowel is placed right on the mast step, so you can take this off the plan. And we can check the height. So I'm very lucky, in fact, that it was slightly high. To make sure you don't sand too much, draw a line on the bollard timber. You must not sand below this line. Then we use a small file to do a bit of the bulk work. And now that we've opened them both up a bit, we place both bollard timbers on, clamp to restrict any movement. Reassemble the dowel with a sanding block. We use the sanding block to open up the individual holes. And now we have it all done. The time has come to carve the top of the timber head or knight head, and the book makes reference that you should take out your chisels and files and start getting to work. Be very careful. I have not had a lot of success doing it that way, and I tend to try and use machines as much as possible to put detail into very fine parts. So I brought out the old Preac, Charlie Files Preac with a sliding table, and I'm going to attempt to practice first to make 6 or 7 of these knight head tops before I actually start working on the bollard timbers. Following on the instructions in the book, I go to the only plan I have of the Thorn and get down to take a good look at the detail. And there's nothing really special. It's very close to what is referenced in the book itself. The Preac has this adjustable stop that allows you to set the wood wherever you need it, so that you can simply put it in place, pull it on, tighten the 2 lock nuts, and then slide up and down against the saw blade. I've readjusted it, and now we're going to cut the second groove in. And when you're doing this so that they're identical, when you do one cut, you need to go to the second one and make the identical cut. And you need to think these things through, so the next cut is further down on the knight head. And I've taken the measurements off the plan, and here we go. And now we're going to do the second to last cut, which is to give a little step down from this inner groove. And the last cut on the saw is the lowest point on the knight head. And on this one, I think I took it down a little bit too much, so I'm going to do quite a bit less this time. So again, now we have 2 identical knight head tops. We just need to sand or carve out the pieces that are left. And now we sand. You're just sanding until all the lines disappear. And taking some sandpaper to sand off all the rough edges. I think the term is chamfer the edges. And there we have it. if I had to be critical of it again, I would think that I took the center down too much. And again, it's just dealing with such fine tolerances. And I've left this side so that you see how I end up with two identical pieces. In the case of the bollards on these boats, the top is not a straight, it's not a 90 degrees, it's at an angle. So the same technique is used. You make up a little block with the angle that is required, and you put the piece onto the saw and go up and down just like you did when making a square one. You end up with an angled piece that's like this. And so it's the same technique. All that you use is a little piece that is angled to match the angle that you want on the top of the head. Of course, having shown you how to use the machines, because this is not a straight square or rectangle piece of wood, it's almost impossible to put it on the sliding table to make up the cuts. So you're going to be back to either knives or chisels. Using the proxon is certainly not a wasted exercise. There's a lot you're going to learn. Parts are going to break, how careful you have to be, whether it's made on a machine or whether you carve it using chisels. We're now going to bevel the forward side of the bollards, and instead of using a chisel, I'm actually using this proxon. Now we'll do the inside. The key to it is to keep both sides parallel. And I am always lining them up to make sure that they are as identical as possible to each other. We now have them identical as identical. We've checked them using the caliper, and the thicknesses are exactly the same. The timber head on the plan shows it tapering from the top down to the bottom. When we look at the timber head on the plan from the HMS Thorn, we see that it's tapered evenly from both the top and bottom of the timber head, with the thinnest part in the center. I'm not going to take you through the actual carving process. Lots of sharp chisels and knives, lots of different size files, and just take your time. Be very careful when you're using the chisels, because they can easily slip and cut a little ridge at the top. I also use the Proxon pen sander. It has a curve section which helps give me nice round curves. So when I've done all the rough work, I actually use this to smooth it out. And here we have the finished parts. I think they came out pretty good. I could find fault if I want to, but we're going to consider this done. We will fill those holes with matching timber, so they'll disappear. Those were lining holes that were clearly put in the wrong place. The last challenge is to build the chock over the bowsprit. So you read, then make a few examples, and only then got clear to me exactly what I was trying to do. I finally got to understand it when I drew it out, and it became much clearer. The difference between the front and the back is simply because if you cut a straight line, the bollard timber is not flush. You remember we offset it a bit, and so that the act of offsetting it actually, for you to cut a straight line, would mean that you have to take off more off the back than the front. It's 2 inches off the front, and although it doesn't give you an exact measurement for the back, my view is it's around 4 inches, and that's what I've set it up for. So I've taken all my measurements off the plan, and I'm now going to cut the top line. And to do that, and to make sure I have a nice clean line, I'm lining it up on the piece and just giving it a very slight tap, which gives me a clean line on the bollard part. And then I go to the front and I take out my 2 inches there. And I have the 2 inches set on the caliper so that I can measure it. And then of course I'm over 50, so to really see what I'm doing, I've got my other set of glasses on. I think the most important line to get is the 2-inch line on the front. And then we move to the back. The other thing that I do is I'm constantly making sure that they're both as identical as possible. So those little pins we use to line them up become very important. And I use this little flat file. I love my little Proxon sander. It really gives nice, clean, sharp surfaces. And so now when we look at it, you'll see that both surfaces line up perfectly. And I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. The Vanderlei dowel maker is really a fantastic tool. I made these sticks from the same wood that we're using to build the Thorn. Dowels are placed and stuck and just waiting for them to dry. Well, the final piece of the bollard timbers is all complete. We will stick it later tonight, and that brings this video to an end.